And once again, McLaren found themselves in the same situation of having the fastest car on the circuit pound for pound, but being completely outgunned strategically, with Oscar Piastri feeling the brunt of the shortfall in McLaren's abilities, with another win slipping out of his grasp. Now, although Lando Norris has closed the gap now to Max in the driver's standings, a title push is still a bit of a tall order. And also a lot of things have to fall in place in order for this to happen. Meanwhile, where things are starting to look very interesting is in the Constructors Championship, where McLaren have closed the gap to Red Bull to just 8 points. Which is staggering considering where we were earlier in the season. And so now McLaren have to decide how to position themselves, because a Constructors' Championship fight is well and truly on, and depending on how they arrange things, potentially a driver's one as well. Now, whilst this is all going on, McLaren appear to have a bit of an inconvenient strength at the moment, where it appears Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri are both up the front end of the grid fighting for wins and pole positions. And that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But the inconvenient thing here is they are also fighting each other at the same time. Just as we saw at Monza when Oscar put a move on Lando, and that was the last they saw of each other pretty much all race. Now, a lot of people, including the commentators during the race, mentioned that if a win was out of Oscar Piastri's reach, then he potentially should have handed his position over to Lando Norris, which means he would get as many points as possible and just start chipping away at Max Verstappen's lead. And in some people's eyes, Oscar could have done this. In fact, it might have been seen as sort of, returning the favour somewhat from Hungary. But what I think is becoming more and more clear race by race is that Oscar does not give a monkey's about Lando Norris's title hopes. And why should he? Oscar must be thinking, if Lando wants to have a crack at the driver's title, fair play, have a go and do it. But he better be faster than me, because I am not jeopardising my race by slowing down. And I don't want to say carry him to the title, but, effectively carry him to the title. Now, whether that's right or wrong is up for debate, and it might be where his head is at right now, but I sense Oscar's thinking now is 100% towards the Constructors' title, and he did everything he could to maximise his contribution on his end. And that contribution could have also have been a win, but as we've seen time and time again, McLaren's strategy fell behind. And so a big question here, and I was thinking this whilst watching the race, is that should Oscar Piastri now just go for it? Or does he bide his time, do a couple of jobs for Lando Norris, help him with his driver's title push, embed himself within the team and earn some respect at McLaren, and then 2025 rolls around, start the season as a title contender with a fresh sheet of paper? So that is what I really want to look at. But before we do, why not subscribe to the channel? It's fantastic when you do. I really appreciate the support so far. It's been great, and let's just hope we can get it up to 5,000 subscribers. Now, I'm in no way implying that if he decides to do so, Oscar is suddenly going to flip a switch and sweep Lando aside. Both drivers are pretty much at the same level right now. Perhaps Lando Norris as the overall package being slightly ahead. As we saw at the Dutch Grand Prix, Lando Norris won the race by 20 seconds or something like that. So when things really go right for him, they do in a really big way. But unfortunately for Lando, they also tend to go wrong for him in a big way. Such as starting from pole at Monza, being the favourite to win, and ultimately dropping down positions in a race that you were nailed on to win. And again, McLaren's strategic shortfalls played a huge part in this. But as we've seen before, Lando's confidence seems to drop at the first hurdle sometimes. Once he's experienced setbacks such as being overtaken into the first corner, losing first position, and also being overtaken by his teammate Oscar Piastri, we've seen that his head does tend to drop a little bit. But what's even worse, we've seen that he finds it very hard to come back from that. Now, we'll never know what might have happened if Oscar decided to act as rear gunner for Lando and not overtake when he had the chance at Monza. But had he decided to hold position and not overtake Lando when he had the opportunity, and also given how well the Ferraris are going, we very easily could have seen both Ferraris on the podium and just one McLaren. So sure, Lando Norris's individual points are maximised, but overall, McLaren's Constructors' title tally is at a loss. So do you see what I'm getting at here? Now, in my opinion, given where McLaren are right now and where they've come from in the last few years, the Constructors' title has to be the absolute priority at the moment. And this involves both drivers getting the absolute maximum that they can at each race and not holding back one bit. However, if they acted in such a way where the driver's title was up for grabs and treated as more of a priority, I just have a feeling that there is a chance McLaren could walk away from 2024 empty-handed with no championships. But if Zak Brown did intervene and say that Oscar had to help towards Lando's title chances, I sense it could really help his career in McLaren and entwine himself further at the team. He's already done such a fantastic job, and the rate that he's maturing and developing at the team, especially this year, only his second year in Formula One, don't forget. Perhaps doing a job for Lando this year wouldn't really hurt him that much. Do a few favours and start 2025 on a level playing field, a fresh sheet of paper, and then you can show the team and also Lando Norris what you can really do. Because although Lando gave a stunning performance at the Dutch Grand Prix, I still think he can't win the title on his own. If he is to have a shot, even if the chances are very slim, he will need the assistance of Oscar Piastri. So sure, he can win races like at Zandvoort, come away with 25 points, no problem, but it's races like Monza where had the McLaren switched and Lando came away 2 points richer, it's little things like that that can make all the difference in the Drivers' Championship. But the situation in McLaren then becomes very odd and also very complex, because if Oscar Piastri pressed on as he has been from now until the end of the season at Abu Dhabi, all in the name of winning the Constructors' Championship, he could be seen as a team player doing the work for the cause of McLaren and every man and every woman back at the factory. Let's get our first Constructors' title in God knows how long. But by Oscar prioritising his contribution towards the Constructors' Championship over helping out Lando Norris in his Drivers' Championship quest, that can also be seen as selfish, especially if you are in the Lando Norris camp. So unfortunately for Oscar Piastri, in some people's eyes, he's seen as a team player, and then he's also seen as selfish as well. So, odd one for him right now. Now, I wouldn't be surprised, and as I mentioned earlier, that if Norris does have this title chance, as slim as it is, he should just get on with it, outperform Oscar Piastri, and just go for it. Because if Norris is as good as everyone says he is, then he should have absolutely no problems outperforming his inexperienced teammates. And this is the interesting thing, because although Norris is higher than Piastri in the Drivers' Championship, he can't seem to rule his teammate in the way that Verstappen can to Perez or Hamilton did to Bottas back in the day. Which means if this Norris Drivers' Championship push is to happen, it's going to require a lot of engineering and a bit of strategy from McLaren. Now, drivers aside, we can't discount how Zak Brown is going to want to play this. Because apart from what we saw at Hungary, where Norris did let Piastri past, he hasn't really been too keen on team orders. In fact, he's criticised other teams for doing it. After all, Piastri wasn't signed to be a Valtteri Bottas or Sergio Perez. And also, when he was announced at McLaren, they had no ambitions of Constructors or Drivers' Championships just yet. So that sort of dynamic wasn't even on the table as an option. But if Zak Brown did tell Oscar to assist Lando Norris in his Drivers' Championship push, credit to Oscar, I think he would just get on with it and just take it in his stride. From what we've seen so far, he's one of the most impressive and mature drivers on the grid right now, and there's every sense that he will just not kick up a fuss and do the talking on the track. But also, I sense use it as fuel for the 2025 season, where he may not want to take any prisoners. Now, when it comes to the car, McLaren have been pretty much very consistent from the start up until now, and it's looking like from now until the end of the season that they will have the fastest car pound for pound on the circuit. Unless, of course, there's some massive upgrades from someone else, but you never know. But also from what we've seen with McLaren this year, having the fastest car, all that stuff, unless you've got a good strategy and a good direction in where the team wants to go, none of this matters. There's been a lot of poor calls which have cost McLaren dearly this year. You could argue had McLaren did what they were supposed to do, Monza should have been a Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri 1-2 job done. But again, they didn't cover themselves, and Charles Leclerc and Ferrari took full advantage with a huge gamble that paid off. And in fairness to Ferrari, it couldn't have paid off in a better place. As things stand right now, with the Constructors' title being wide open, yet the Drivers' title still so far-fetched for McLaren, and also with Zak Brown's attitude on things like team orders, I just have a feeling that they're going to let Piastri just keep going business as usual. The number of points that Norris is able to take off Verstappen race by race, it just doesn't seem enough. And Verstappen had a uncharacteristically bad race at Italy. It looks like that unless something really substantial happens, like a DNF or a no points finish from Max, unfortunately, or positively for some, we might see another Max World Championship. But if we get to somewhere like Vegas or Qatar, when the gap has been closed to a point where it looks like that there is a serious chance that a driver's title fight might be on, Only then, I think, we'll get to a point where McLaren do involve themselves and impose some team orders. And also by then, you would like to think that McLaren would be in a commanding position in the Constructors' Championship, so then they can afford to switch focus. But anyway, that's just a load of what if, and yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I think from now until the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi, Oscar Piastri is just going to want to go for it. He doesn't seem to care about Lando Norris's title hopes, and also, if the situation was reversed, I don't think Lando Norris would give a monkeys about his title hopes either. And after all, the Constructors' Championship is where the money is for the teams, and as long as your drivers are finishing first and second, second and third, third, fourth, ultimately getting the maximum from each race, who cares what order they're in, as long as the maximum points are secured. And I did wonder this as well, just as Oscar went by Lando at the Grand Prix, are we starting to see some sort of a killer instinct emerge in him in the same way as we've seen with Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, where when it comes to the crunch and it really comes down to it, it's all about your individual efforts. Interesting thoughts. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe. Thanks for all your support so far, and as always, I'm Paul, and I'll see you later. Cheers.